Hey everybody, how's it going? It's Jiva and welcome back for a new video. So I'm actually back once again with a little seasonal TBR since we are well into the spring now already, and I actually finally managed to finalize my reading list of the books, like top books on my spring TBR. I'm finally here to share with you what those books are going to be and I could not be more excited. It's been so much fun just browsing my own TBR, other people's recommendations, like some new releases, just everything. It's so much fun delving into books, honestly. It's the most fun thing in the world you can do, and I enjoyed it immensely. And also enjoy just making this list. So hopefully you guys actually find some books on here that might sound interesting to you as well. Hopefully. I do kind of have it categorized into 3 different genres. I have a couple of contemporaries that I hope you to read. There's gonna be some historical fiction because for some reason there's no better time than spring to read some historical fiction, especially some like Regency books or maybe some Victorian fiction. And then lastly, of course, I do have some romantasy on here as well. Specifically, I think I have a lot of books that feature fairies because again, I really associate fairies with spring. So that's what my mind went to immediately. And yeah, without further ado, we're just gonna jump straight into it, and actually I'm just gonna start it off with the 2 contemporaries that I have. Okay, so the first contemporary that I have on this list, it's a book called Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers, and this is by Jacque Aye Sutanto. And listen, if that title didn't already entertain you enough into reading this book, then you also learn that this is actually a story about a 60-year-old Chinese woman, and she is a tea shop owner and part-time detective. Her main cases involve getting involved in her son's love life though and trying to find the perfect match for him. But things change one day when she wakes up and finds a dead body in the middle of her tea shop. And of course, Vera Wong, being the detective that she is, you know, the skilled detective, she decides to take things into her own hands. She doesn't trust the police to do a good job. She decides to try and figure out who exactly was the murderer on her own, probably not leaving behind her side hustle, you know, finding the perfect match for her son all the while. So it just sounds like it's gonna be a perfect blend of a bit of a murder mystery and a little bit of romance. And I am excited personally because this is a book with a main character that is outside of the age range that I usually read. I realized most of the books that I read have either like main characters in their teens or in their 20s or like early 30s. I haven't read many books that have main characters outside of that age range, and I really want to read more of those. So this seems like the perfect addition to the TBR, and I really want to get to it. So this is definitely one of the books on this, you know, on this list that I for sure want to get to. I maybe forgot to mention this before actually, but just to thicken the plot of this video, I kind of separated the books that I have on here into must-reads and into hopefuls. So the must-reads are the books that I really 100% want to get to this spring, and the hopefuls are just some like additional books just in case I get into my mood reader mode and I'm just in the mood for something else. So that's kind of why I have some reserves here as well. Plus I just couldn't narrow it down to less books, so but that doesn't matter. Then we have the second and last contemporary book on this list, and this is a story called How to Be a Better Adult by Jacque Aye. And this one fits more on like the, I guess, magical realism story. It's about self-discovery, a self-discovery journey about a bit of a glow up and just changing your life for the better, that kind of thing, which I think is a very fitting concept for spring. At least that's the kind of story that I tend to gravitate over during spring. And in this one we basically follow a young woman who kind of feels stagnant in her life at the stage that she's at right now. She is looking at her peers and they all seem to be doing much better than her. Her dad is pushing her to do better at her own job. She's starting to feel like even though she's a very hard worker, she is very competent and compliant, but she feels like her co-workers don't really appreciate that. So she takes it upon herself, she takes it into her own hands to change that, to really make her co-workers and her company see her and her hard work and reward her for it. So she actually stumbles across a handbook that seems to be kind of like a handbook of how to handle adulthood, but it ends up being a handbook that pushes just a little bit of magic into her self-discovery journey. and it sounds like the absolute sweetest thing I've ever heard about, and the cover is gorgeous. All the 10s, seriously, the cover artist deserves all the 10s. So yeah, that's the other contemporary I have on this list, and I am incredibly excited to actually check it out. It is currently on the list of hopefuls. I'm not 100% sure I'm gonna get to it this spring, but it's definitely a book I want to get to in 2024 for sure. Alright, next up we're actually gonna move on to some of the historical fiction or like regency stories that I put on the list, and we're gonna leave romantasy for last because there's the most romantasy books on here, honestly. And yeah, I do have to confess though, the main reason why I'm interested in this time period specifically is because the new season of Bridgerton is actually dropping toward the end of spring. I think it's coming out sometime in May, and I am so in love with those storylines and just the whole aesthetic of it, the whole I don't know what to call it, the theme of it, and I desperately need some books that kind of feature the same sort of storyline. I am still deciding whether to actually check out the Bridgerton books. Let me know if you've read them and whether they are worth checking out. I mean, I've heard some good things about them and I've heard some horrible things about them, so no, I'm not sure whether they are worth checking out. Honestly, my main interest for the book stems from like the featuring sibling relationships. I am such a sucker for a good sibling story, and obviously the Bridgertons, we have 7 siblings and they have just the most fun relationships, at least in the TV shows they do, you know. I don't know whether it's the same in the books, but yeah, that's kind of the main reason why I'm very much interested in the Bridgerton series. But in the meantime, while I'm still deciding whether to check them out or not, I found some other like Regency and I think some maybe Victorian era romances that I would love to check out in the meantime. So the first one is actually Aphrodite and the Duke by J.J. McAvoy. It sounds exactly like the sort of storyline that you would get on a Bridgerton season, so yeah, it just made me super interested in this book. We basically follow Aphrodite de Belle, and she had an unsuccessful season on the ton. She fell in love with a man, but he ended up marrying another woman. So disappointed, she decides to kind of take a break from everything. She moves away until 4 years later she's actually asked back by her mother to help with her sister's debut. And arriving back to London, she actually discovers that the man that she fell in love with is now a widower, and he, very rudely if you ask me though, decides to set his sights on Aphrodite again, and he really wants to give their love a second chance. So now it's pretty much up to Aphrodite if she can find it in herself to forgive him and take him back and fall in love with him again and all that jazz. So yeah, it sounds so exciting, and I definitely must read this book during the spring. Like, it's on the must-reads list because I would cry if I don't get to this one during the spring. The second historical fiction on my list is a book called The Misadventures of an Amateur Naturalist, and this is by Ceinwen Langley, I want to say. And it's actually, listen, it's pitched as a fluffy, sapphic Beauty and the Beast retelling. And there is nothing else I need to know about this book to really want to pick it up like right now. But yeah, we basically follow, you know, the story of the main character. From the reviews that I have read, it does seem like it focuses more on the life of the main character. The main character, who's not called Belle, but actually she's Celeste Roseanne, and she actually really wants to become a biologist. So the first half of the story seemingly follows more her life and her aspirations to become a biologist, about her friendships and about her family, until about halfway through we obviously get like the Beauty and the Beast twist, you know, where she gets taken by the beast. So she ends up, you know, living in a castle alongside this beast, and obviously her wannabe biologist brain goes like, oh my god, this is like the discovery of a lifetime. I need to get closer to this beast so I can study it and like write a book about it or something. I don't know, just, you know, make it her discovery, and this would be like a huge, obviously, step in her career toward becoming a biologist. But yeah, by doing so, by getting closer to the beast, she obviously ends up falling in love with it, and all the good things, all the good Beauty and the Beast things end up happening, of course. And speaking about sapphic Victorian era inspired stories, we do have another one. This one doesn't have any magical twists though, I believe, and it is called Don't Want You Like a Best Friend by Emma R. Alban. And listen, we once again have a book with kind of the perfect pitch. because this book is supposedly the lesbian Bridgerton / Parent Trap you never knew you needed. And can we just admit how a more perfect combination of words has never been spoken before? Both of those stories are stories that I love, and having them together in a book sounds like the perfect experience. So yeah, we do follow a couple of main characters in the story. We have Gwen and we have Beth. Beth is actually somebody who has just entered onto the marriage market, and she's kind of like sick of the pretense of going through all these like blushing dates. And we have Gwen, who's been here for 4 years already, and she's already decided that she's not marrying any of these idiots. So Beth and Gwen become fast friends, and they actually realize that both of their parents are single and supposedly also like ex-lovers. So they kind of hatch a plan to get their parents to fall in love again, to kind of find a spark again, so they can actually spend all their time together. Because they do, the more time they're spending together, the more they are in each other's company, they realize that they don't really want to stop doing that. They kind of want to be together all the time, and you know, looking for husbands is just messing with that, you know, it's taking away from their time with each other. So obviously something needed to be done, and that something apparently is setting up their parents. It sounds like it's gonna be so cute. I am in love with the concept of this story, and once again, I kind of want to put this book on the must-reads list. I can't remember where I put it before, but I'm pretty sure, like right now, after telling you that synopsis, it is now on the must-reads. I did have it on the hopefuls before, but it's not on the hopefuls anymore. It's definitely a must-read. Okay, next book we once again have Regency era, and this time we're gonna switch up the diversity because this time we have 2 men falling in love, so it's a gay story. And it's called The Secret Lives of Country Gentlemen by K.J. Charles. And I'm actually curious whether any of you have read a K.J. Charles book before, because reading the reviews of the story, I realized that everybody not only praised this book, but the author in general. Apparently she's written multiple very fine books. So I have high hopes for this one. And yeah, we do follow, like I said, 2 men who fall in love. So we open up the story with Gareth, one of the main characters, actually having an anonymous fling with another man. And he gets kind of heartbroken when at the end of the like week or something they decide that, or like the other man decides that he doesn't really want to continue on with the relationship, that he just kind of wants to keep it at what it was. So they go their separate ways back to their respective lives. Gareth actually finds out that his father has passed away. He was raised by his uncle. And with his father's passing, he actually inherits a baronetcy. So he basically becomes a baron, right? I'm sorry, I'm struggling to English today, so excuse me if I say something weird, but yeah, he becomes a baron in this small town, and this small town is actually highly involved with a big smuggling business. And of course, at the head of that smuggling business is none other than the man that Gareth had the anonymous fling with. So we meet the other main character called Joss, and when the two meet again, it's kind of uncomfortable. There's a bit of blackmailing going on. But at the end of the day, I do believe that romance is going to win out and everything's gonna be fine. So that's what I know about this story. Apparently, it's like a pretty well-balanced story. We have a little bit of like a romantic conflict, but also a lot of tenderness and loving care. So yeah, overall, I'm just expecting a very sweet story. And like from the reviews that I was reading, I'm kind of expecting the characters to be a little bit flawed. So like they're not gonna be this perfect matchy couple. They're actually gonna have their issues, and they're gonna have to work through their issues, and that makes me super excited as well. So yeah, I'm excited for this one. So The Secret Lives of Country Gentlemen by K.J. Charles. And then we have another historical fiction. I believe this is the last one on the list. Okay, so this next story is called Earl Next Door by Ashtyn Newbold. And you know how I mentioned before that I'm a sucker for like a good sibling story? Well, this book kind of plays into that as well, but here we don't really have like a big group of siblings that we follow. We actually just have the 2 main characters, and each of them has like a sister. So the 2 main characters kind of take it upon themselves to really make sure that both, like each respective sister, marries well. The trouble is they kind of get in each other's way trying to do this. So on the one hand, we follow like the eldest Dixon sister is called Henrietta, and she really wants to make sure that her sister marries well. And so when they move to Bath, she actually wants that her suitor moves into the last townhouse remaining available, But unfortunately this is impossible when another man moves into the house, into the townhouse, and here we'll meet the other main character called Charlie. He moves into the last townhouse hoping to woo this baroness? No, a Lady Eleanor. He's all ready to marry Wilde, to marry Lady Eleanor, so his sister doesn't have to marry the man that she is currently promised to, because apparently he is like not a good man. So, you know, he's gonna do everything in his power to woo Lady Eleanor. But Henrietta is kind of pissed off that, you know, he just took the last house available, so now her sister can marry well, and what she needs to do is to drive out Charlie from the house. So the two butt heads, and we all, I think, can imagine where this story is going to go. I am so excited, okay? Nothing beats a good kind of like an enemies to lovers story, and here the enemies are going to be real because both of them are taking care of their sisters, and that kind of determination is not something to go against. Hopefully they're going to be able to work something out that's going to work for everybody, but that's what we gotta find out by picking up the book. So yeah, that was the last historical fiction on my TBR for spring, The Earl Next Door by Ashtyn Newbold. So excited. It sounds so exciting. Okay, now on to the last part of this video. It's time to talk about some romantasy books that are currently on top of my spring TBR. So 3 books that I hopefully will get to this spring, but it's not 100% I will. And I'm so sorry for this first book I'm gonna mention. I feel so annoying already. I feel like I'm constantly talking about reading this book and then never reading it. And that is Wolfsong by DJ Klune. So yeah, you know, wolf shifters, romance, cozy fantasy, all the things, all the good things in the story. But the problem is the size. I get so intimidated by how big this book is. So that's kind of the reason why I haven't jumped into it yet. But I will. Someday I will. That's a promise to both you and me. I will read it one day. Next up I actually have an author, not so much like the book itself. Obviously I'm excited about the book, but it's the author I've been meaning to check out for a while. And that is Juliette Marillier. And the book that I have is Heart's Blood. So this is, I believe, one of her adult stories, but I genuinely don't even feel like a real reader because I haven't read a Juliette Marillier book. Like, it seems criminal in my mind that I have owned this book for years now and still haven't read it yet, because apparently she's like a masterful storyteller. Her books kind of feel very fairy tale-esque, which is exactly what this cover reminds me of, very fairy tale-ish, you know? So yeah, this is a book that I'm really hoping to read. I don't know what it's about, and I actually don't want to know what it's about. I just want to jump into it and enjoy the ride. So yeah, that's one of the hopefuls for the spring. And lastly, I have here a hopeful a bit of a funny story, but I really want to read Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. The reason why I'm not jumping into this book right now is because I do want to have the sequel ready before actually starting this book. I'm pretty sure, I'm fairly certain this book ends on a cliffhanger, and I don't want to, you know, stay stuck on that cliff, honestly. So I will pick up this book immediately after I get the sequel in my hands, so I can then just, you know, read them back to back and enjoy them. I have a feeling I'm gonna really love this series. From what I've heard about it, I think it's gonna be my cup of tea. So yeah, but somebody please convince me to get a sequel already, because I don't know what I'm waiting for. Then the second pile are the must-reads from my physical TBR. A lot of these books are like Fae books, but we also have this lovely duology here at the top. So we have This Poison Heart and This Wicked Fate by Kalynn Bayron. I will actually cry and perish if I don't get to these 2 books this spring. I've been waiting for months now, okay, for like the weather to kind of get more spring-like and for it to be perfect to pick up these books, because apparently this is like a story about a young woman called Bree. She has like plant-based magic, which is kind of the reason why I've been waiting for spring. Spring just really reminds me of like plant-based magic, I don't know why. But yeah, so we have the main character who has some magic. She can grow things really fast, but when she inherits a house, she actually discovers that there's like a hidden garden in the back with a lot of poisonous plants in it, and that is something that she now has to deal with. There is romance, there's magic. It just seems like the perfect duology. The covers are absolutely stunning. I'm in love with them. So yeah, this is a duology that is on my must-reads, and I'm so excited to jump into them. It's finally time. It's finally here. And then moving on to the Fae books, as I mentioned, I actually have here a sequel. This is like the third book in the series, and it's called A Grim and Sunken Vow by Ashley Shuttleworth. This is the sequel to A Dark and Hollow Star and A Dark and Faded Light. No, the second, I got the second book's title wrong, but you know what I mean. It's the Dark Hollow saga, and this series just has me in such a chokehold right now. I'm in love with it. It's like one of my favorite series that I've read recently. It's like an urban fantasy with fairies. We have such cute romance and the characters and their banter. I genuinely, if there was a book that I would want to jump into and live with the main characters, this would actually be one of them. I would love to be best friends with all the main characters we have in here. There's some evil people in here, okay? So I wouldn't want to be friends with all of them. But the main characters are such a fun cast of characters, like perfection, genuinely. I love them so much. So yeah, this is the third book. It's the book after a very big cliffhanger, which happened at the end of book 2. So I've been desperately waiting to get my hands on this book, and now I finally have it and I can read it. Finally find out how the characters are gonna get themselves out of the shitty situation that they found themselves in the previous book. So yeah, I cannot wait to jump into this one. And then I have my probably most anticipated release of 2024. One of the reasons being is that I follow the author on Instagram for a couple of years now, and even though like I wasn't all that active on Bookstagram, I still like saw some updates about his story and it being picked up by like a publisher. And it's also very exciting and the story sounds amazing. So yeah, the book is Lore of the Wilde by Analeigh Sbrana. This already looks incredible. Okay, that cover is some of the most gorgeous covers that have come out in recent months. It's beautiful, the artwork is amazing, and the storyline sounds just as amazing. We follow the main character called Lore, and she actually makes a deal with like a Fae Lord, but she kind of tricks the Fae Lord because the things that he thinks she's after is not the thing that she is really after. What she's really after is actually magic. And enter some like magical books, I want to say, and there's like a love triangle, which I'm not the biggest fan of, but I can deal with it for the sake of reading this book. So we have the main character going on this journey of finding magic of her own, and it is all in the company of two very attractive fae, if we judge by the cover. So yeah, sounds incredible, okay? Everybody, I've kind of been keeping up with the reviews a little bit, and everybody who has read it seems to love it, so very excited. I cannot wait. This might actually be my next read. I don't think I can hold back any longer. I need to dive into this one. So yeah, and talking about fairies, I have another sequel that came out that I still haven't read, and that is Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherworld. So this is the sequel to Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. I actually read the first book already. I read it. This was the very last book that I read in 2023. I loved it. I loved it so much. I feel like the more I read Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, the more I was loving it. I loved the direction that the story went in. I love the characters. Their relationship is just so beautiful. So yeah, I cannot wait to get more of all of that in book 2, especially since we're gonna be delving a little bit more into the family matter of one of the main characters. If you know, you know. So yeah, I think that's gonna be a very exciting part of the plot. But otherwise, yeah, excited. I'm so happy for all these fairy books that I have on my TBR. Like, and all of them so beautiful. Can we just talk about how gorgeous these are? Sheesh, man. Okay, now we're moving on to some of the romantasy books that I don't own physically yet, but they are part of my online TBR. So first book I want to mention is Faebound by Saara El-Arifi. Guys, I'm pretty sure that if you've been keeping up with like the book publishing world, you do know about this book. You've heard about it before probably, because it's been getting a lot of attention ever since it came out. And it's been like one of my, again, most anticipated releases of the year. It just sounds incredible. We follow two sisters who live in like the elven community. One of them is a warrior, one of them is a diviner. After a bad event happens, they are exiled out of like the elven city or something, and out among the fae. And this actually is a bit of a shock to the two sisters because they didn't even know the fae were real. They thought they were just like a myth, a story or something. And it takes a bit of an adjustment in their perspective on life to really come to terms with the fact that they have to deal with the fae. They end up falling in love with the fae, they end up being betrayed by the fae. Plus, on top of everything, they have to deal with, you know, everything that's happened to them and their sisterhood or something. So this book just sounds like it's gonna be very complex, but at the same time just a fun fantasy. So I'm very excited about this one actually. Next up on this list, we actually have a book that's probably on the very top of my spring TBR. I have been so incredibly excited about checking this book out ever since I discovered it. And this one is called The Fairy Bargains of Prospect Hill by Rowenna Miller. And actually, I'm gonna read you the synopsis of what this book is about. So it says, in the early 1900s, two sisters must navigate the magic and the dangers of the fae in this enchanting and cozy historical fantasy about sisterhood and self-discovery. There is no magic on Prospect Hill, or anywhere else for that matter. But just on the other side of the veil is the world of the fae. Generations ago, the first farmers on Prospect Hill learned to bargain small trades to make their lives a little easier. A bit of glass to find something lost, a cup of milk for better layers in the chicken coop. Much of that old wisdom was lost as the riverboats gave way to the rail lines and the farmers took work at mills and factories. Elaine Fairborn's family, however, was always superstitious, and she still hums the rhymes to find a lost shoe and to ensure dry weather on her sister's wedding day. When Delphine confides her new husband is not the man she thought he was, Elaine will stop at nothing to help her sister escape him. Small bargains buy them time, but a major one is needed. Yet the price for true freedom may be more than they're willing to pay. It sounds so cool. I love this so much because I feel like this is such a folklore-y take on fairies, you know, the whole bargains thing and how people used to like do bargains with fairies to kind of have a better life. I feel like this is this is straight from like a folklore. I don't know what folklore, I just remember this type of stories being told when I was little and it makes me so excited. So even though this is an adult book, it feels like such a step back into childhood. It makes me genuinely like as happy as can be. This is at the very top of my spring TBR. I'm just so happy that I found it. The cover is gorgeous, the premise is gorgeous. I love the take on fairies in this one and the fact that, like, you know, we have humans who have to deal with fairies and make bargains and all the good stuff. Okay, so if the previous book was number 1 on my spring TBR, this next one is definitely number 2. And this one is called 3 Kinds of Lucky by Kim Harrison. And listen, this might actually be one of the most original premises, especially for an urban fantasy that I have read recently. It's something so unique. I've never heard of a story quite like this. And it's basically about the main character. She's called Petra Grady and she doesn't really have much skill with magic. Her one talent lies with actually handling the dross. And dross is something like whenever a magic user uses a spell, there's like residue magic, and that magic is called the dross. So the main character's job is kind of like cleaning up the residue magic before it does any harm. And this skill doesn't go unnoticed. She actually gets hired by a man called Benedict to actually help him when he casts this big spell. But working together, they actually discover a dangerous secret about dross and about how Petra Grady's ability might not be as innocent as it seems at first. So yeah, doesn't it sound so original? I've never heard of a story like this. Maybe you guys have, but I definitely haven't. So yeah, I've been excited about reading this one ever since, like finding it and stumbling across it. So yeah, it's number 2 on my spring TBR for sure. I'm actually starting to notice something, but I don't know whether that's just because my attention has been more on fae books recently, but I kind of feel like the publishing has started moving toward publishing a lot more fae books recently. I don't know whether it's because ACOTAR is getting really popular recently again, or it's just like the new trend or something, I don't know. But I feel like there's so many good fae books coming out in 2024. Like, it's been 3 months now, and already so many exciting and interesting fairy books have come out, including this next one. This one's called How to Fake It with a Fae by Amy Boyles. Listen, it sounds so exciting. Okay, we have the main character, and she's kind of a witch. She's called Addison Thornrose. She has magic, and I think her special ability is actually matching people with like their next perfect read. But she kind of wishes she had a talent of matching herself with a perfect man as well, because she's not having much luck in love. And this is especially concerning recently because she's just found out that if she doesn't marry soon, her whole entire family is actually gonna lose magic. So that's struggle, but of course her family is determined to actually find her somebody, so they kind of throw like a Bridgerton style ball. And here we meet the other main character. He's called Phelan. He's the king of the Fae, and he kind of has beef with Addison's family, so he's like, haha, I'm gonna attend this ball and I'm gonna get my revenge. I'm gonna make her fall in love with me and then break her heart. Ha ha ha. But of course, what ends up happening when he gets to the ball, he starts forming a connection with Addison. There's like a magical connection, I believe. And in their haste to kind of unconnect, they decide to pretend to fake date for a while, just while they figure out how to disconnect this connection that they're feeling. Like I said, I don't know how to English properly today, but you know what I mean. And now we're down to the very last book on this list, but it is in no way any less exciting than any of the others. And it's called The Honey Witch by Sydney J. Shields. It sounds so cute and so cozy and magical, and it takes place on an island. We have the main character, she's called Marigold Claude, and she is a bit of an asocial person. She definitely prefers like the company of spirits to other humans. So she kind of likes the idea when her grandmother invites her to the island of Innisfree to train her to become the next honey witch. It also doesn't really seem like that much trouble, the fact that becoming a honey witch means that she must never fall in love with anybody, and everything's going fine until a new arrival comes to the island of Innisfree, our other main character, Lottie Burke, and she just does not believe in magic. She's like a skeptic, and Marigold seems to take this personally and seems determined to prove Lottie wrong and prove to her that magic does exist. And I think we all know where this is going, where some romance, some sparks might fly, and this might cause trouble to, you know, Marigold, because she's not supposed to fall in love. So we don't know what the outcome's gonna be, but it for sure is like a setup for a very cozy, sweet romance with some magic. There's something so sweet about a grandmother-granddaughter relationship, especially in like with like a magical twist, so I'm always a sucker for those as well. And yeah, that's what I know about the Honey Witch. And that concludes this list. My goodness, that was a lot of talking. I really hope you guys found something on this list that you might actually be interested in. I'd love to know if you did find something interesting, which book it was, and if you're gonna pick it up, we should totally read them together and talk about them. I'm just saying. And yeah, thank you so much for joining me in this video and for checking it out. I'm gonna admit, making seasonal TBRs has become like one of my favorite things recently. I love just sitting down and doing some research on what books are coming out, on what books have come out before, and just making lists, man. Making lists is so much fun. So yeah, if you want to, feel free to share some of the books from your own spring TBR you're excited to read. And that's gonna be it from me. So I hope you're having a great day or night wherever you are, and until next time, see you then. Bye bye!